I am honored to present my conversation with the great Bob Newhart. Enjoy.
Lock the gate!
I'm sitting out in my car in front of a home in Bel Air. Haven't done this in a while. And I'm nervous. When you're going to talk to somebody like Bob Newhart, I'm a bit in awe. This is a guy that's had an amazing career on television. But I just spent the morning listening to his first 3 records. The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, Return of the Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, and Behind the Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart. Now, these all were recorded roughly between 1959 and 1961. The first album, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, won 2 Grammys. 1961, the Grammys. Won the album of the year, best new artist, and Return of the Button-Down Mind won best spoken word album the same year. So this is an amazing amount of output. And these were huge records. And these were game-changing records in terms of what I see as the evolution from the comedian to the stand-up comedian. I don't think Bob Newhart gets the proper respect that he should as a stand-up comic and as somebody that really invented the form of one of the main inventors of the form of, American stand-up, shifting away from joke-telling and from, straight-up comedic entertaining to actually doing cultural commentary and satire. I mean, people are familiar with, or at least familiar with the name of Lenny Bruce or the name of Mort Saul. But this is a little after those guys put out their records that Bob was working. And these records are profoundly important in terms of creating what the possibilities of stand-up could be, of point-of-view comedy, of criticizing satirically the forces that were at that time, marketing, advertising, politics, bureaucratic employment, what was being presented as the future of America. This is an interesting time that I don't know about historically that often, but it's a transition time. At the middle of the Eisenhower administration. It's before Kennedy, but it's post-war, and there was a certain amount of momentum going on in America. There's a big change going on. The beatniks were already around. As I said, Lenny was already around. There was a counterculture. But Bob Newhart, becomes huge, really speaking truth to power in a very palatable way. He did comedy that it wasn't just, him on the phone talking to someone we couldn't hear, but there, on some of these records, there's characters. He's doing characters that are engaging with each other. He's setting up scenes in offices, on the telephone, in driving instructors, on vacations. He's doing full scenes. He's what I heard one reviewer say about Cosby. He's peopling the stage with these characters. This is not something you see much anymore, where comedians will do a series of characters within a scene. There's a few guys that do it, and I love it. It's a rare thing, and it was rare even then, obviously, to do well. In my mind, Bob Newhart's one of the most important stand-ups ever. As I said, a lot of people know him from his TV shows, and I think those are fine. I think they're great. They're obviously amazing. They were hilarious, both the Bob Newhart Show and Newhart years later. But there was a period where he was just doing stand-up. He guest hosted the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson over 80 times. He was on the Dean Martin Variety Show, dozens of times. Ed Sullivan made appearances in movies. But if you think about it, and I'm not sure you would unless I told you, the 3 records that happened between 59 and 61 were over 10 years before the Bob Newhart Show, which really familiarized everybody with Bob Newhart. That's a long time. I wonder what was going on in those times. I wonder what was going on in his mind as he made the shift into stand-up. I guess I'm going to find all these things out as soon as I pull into his driveway. Just sitting out here weirdly in Bel Air, talking on a microphone, parked on a fairly secluded lane. And he's in his 80s now. I'll try and keep my my act together here. I've made a bunch of notes here. I've got 2 pages of handwritten notes in the margins all over the place. It's just like my brain splattered it onto a piece of paper, all the things that I should know. But ultimately, it's going to really, come down to me and him and I sitting there and talking. Oh, man. Yeah, I feel this way a lot. Felt this way when I was sitting outside of Jonathan Winter's house. Felt this way when I was in the parking lot of Mel Brooks's office. Sitting outside of Carl Reiner's house. Sitting outside Dick Van Dyke's house. These guys are guys that, that were sort of there at the beginning. And it's always daunting to me to sort of, how do I encapsulate that? How do I, get a sense of that? How do I get it all in, or at least get that moment? Moments of I've got to shut up. I should probably. I can't even head inside yet. So I'll just sit here. Hey, excuse me a second. We're sponsored today by Stamps.com, and I want to talk for a minute about a feeling. You know that feeling you get when you can just get things done with the click of your mouse, stuff that used to take entire chunks out of your day, and now you can just click on a link and it's done? That's a good feeling, isn't it? And Stamps.com lets you have that feeling every time you need to get your mailing and shipping done. Don't leave your desk. Don't get in your car. Just sit at your computer and click. Buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter or package using your computer and printer. Then just hand it to your mail carrier or drop it in a mailbox, and you'll never have to go to the post office again. I love that feeling, folks. Sometimes I just print out postage when I don't even need it. Feels good. Right now, use my promo code WTF to start a no-risk trial and get a $110 bonus offer that includes a digital scale to calculate the exact postage for letters and packages. And you'll also get up to $55 of free postage. Don't wait. Go to Stamps.com. Before you do anything else, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage and type in WTF. That's Stamps.com. Enter WTF. We're also sponsored today by Squarespace, the all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, and online store. Squarespace is constantly bringing you new features, new designs, and even better support. They have beautiful, logical design templates, and the whole thing is drag and drop. Yeah, baby. You don't need to know how to write code or anything like that. And if you're still having problems, they have a support team ready for you at any hour through live chat and email. Plans start at just $8 a month, and if you sign up for a year, you get your domain name thrown in for free. Start a trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. Visit squarespace.com/WTF for a free trial and 10% off your purchases. Enter offer code MARC at checkout. That's squarespace.com/WTF. Offer code MARC, M-A-R-C, Mark with a C, M-A-R-C. Squarespace, a better web starts with your website. So we were just talking about Jonathan Winters when I spent time with him. You said that he was one of the first guys you ever saw?
He was, Johnny and I got to, well, there was a club in Chicago called the Black Orchid. And I think somebody fell, I had never worked a nightclub, but I had a kind of minor reputation around Chicago.
As what?
As just a funny guy. I did a local television show there. I did a Man on the Street show. And a guy, Tom Racine, was the host.
Yeah.
It's a Man on the Street show in 1958. Now, a Man on the Street show, was revolutionary in 1947, but it was no longer revolutionary in 1958.
Well, that's very well.
So it was hard getting people to stop because they'd like just push you out of their way, you know. Oh, here comes the gentleman. We'd like to. Oh, I'm sorry.
They'd had enough of it already.
Yes. So he would do regular interviews, and then I would be the comic relief, and I would do
on a topic, usually, or just
just whatever I wrote the night before.
That was on you.
Whatever struck you.
Show up prepared.
Whatever struck me is funny. We were on opposite Today and Captain Kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
So
tough spot.
Very tough spot. It was 5 days a week. And we were on for 16 weeks. We got one postcard. We weren't even sure if the signal was getting out of the building.
The postcard said, "Why are you guys still on?"
No, the postcard, I did a guy, the most famous human interest storyteller in the world. This man has published many books of human interest, just strictly on. So Tom asked me, what is your favorite? Of all the stories you've written, you must have a favorite human interest story. So I tell this story about it. I said, well, it's the family, and they had this dog. They had a little dog, and the dog had been with the family for, years and years. And somebody left the door, the gate open, and the dog got out. And when the kids came back, from school, and said, "Where's Sparky?" And the mother said, "I don't know, is he in the house?" I said, "No, I live in the backyard." He's not in the backyard. So they started looking for the dog. The dog, and it just became blibbering, The car was a guy, he wanted to buy the book.
Oh, he thought it was a real book?
He thought it was. So I said, oh my God, we're not even getting through to people. They
don't know it's a shtick.
It's a put-on.
That still happens,
I'm sure.
There's a sucker board every minute. People just believe everything literally. Poor guy, you moved him. He's all worked up. Just wanted the book. So, I listened to, all the records, the first three records. And
first three were the best, yeah.
Well, it was an amazing amount of output, and it
was a flood. It was the first three albums were just, they just poured out.
Right, and leading up to that, before we get into exactly what happened, so you're around Chicago. You grew up there.
Yeah.
Do you go back still?
Yeah, I go back. I love it.
People
there?
It's
a great city. Yeah, I love it.
Still have family there?
Yeah, my three sisters are there. Yeah.
And so, what was when you grew up? What was your family like? What was the life like? What did your old man do?
He drank. Well, but I thought everybody's life was that.
Yeah.
That's what a kid does.
Right.
I mean, he worked during the day. He was a heating and air conditioning and heating salesman.
Uh-huh.
And then he'd come home, and then we'd have dinner, sometimes as a family, other times not. And then he would leave around 8 o'clock, and he would go to this bar with all his friends.
Yeah.
And then he'd come back about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and he had a snoot full,
Yeah.
And but I thought that's what every father did.
And in retrospect, what do you think?
Well, I don't think he wanted to be with us. I mean, it finally dawned on me that maybe we weren't that. In fact, I guess my career is all about just trying to get my dad's attention. Hey, and I had this conversation with Steve Martin. He had the same upbringing.
Really?
Not that his father was an alcoholic, but his father was was just uninterested.
Right.
And
detached.
And he spent his time just, trying to impress his dad. And so
I think that's.
I'm devoted. I mean, I want to thank him.
Yeah.
Because if I grew up in a normal I'd be an accountant somewhere. You know.
It's interesting how many comics I talk to that have an experience like that. You know, whether their father's detached or absent, or this need for this approval to prove yourself.
Sure.
But there's also like a weird anger at the core of that as well. Like, why? So I guess your mother was solid.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She was. Yeah. Very. She kept it going. Yeah.
But was your dad?
But in a way, she allowed him to do it. You know?
That's the classic structure.
Yeah.
Put him to bed, picked him up, walked him in.
Not that so much. He wasn't that kind of drunk. He just was. He drank every night.
Yeah.
Until a doctor said to him, George, that was his first name. He said, George, you can't drink anymore. You're allowed one drink.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad said, okay.
And that was it?
That was it. From then on, he had one drink during the day. That's all he had.
And was he a different guy?
No. He probably not as much fun.
Yeah. Are you the oldest, or where do you fit in with the whole?
Second oldest, yeah.
And where did your sisters end up doing? How did it all go?
Oldest sister is a nun, a religious.
Catholic really a nun?
Yeah, why would I lie about that? I'm not going to make anything up. She was the first astronaut, the first woman astronaut.
The first astronaut nun.
That's right.
The flying nun was based on her. But so you brought up religious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could say that. Yeah.
Catholic.
Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah. The fear was put in you early on.
Sure.
And you remained religious.
Yes.
No, that's. I guess you got to have something that holds you together, right?
Yeah. I guess. It works for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not as religious as I used to be.
Show business will do that to you.
But I like this. I like Francis. I like a lot of the stuff he's doing.
Who?
Pope Francis.
Oh yeah.
I call him Francis.
Okay, yeah. You talked to him this morning.
We're very close. Yeah, I just got off the phone.
Calls me for advice. That's a new bit. You're on the phone with Francis. Yeah, he seems like a certainly a more open-minded fella.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's have you been over there? Have you been to Rome? Have you seen the heart of it all?
Yeah, I went to Rome with the Rickles, as a matter of fact.
When did that friendship start?
That friendship started because my wife, Jenny, of 51 years, she and I married, we were married 51 years. She and Barbara Rickles, who was then Barbara Sklar, was a secretary for an agent that Jenny was going out with. Not while we were married, but before we got married. Because I would have put my foot down.
Sure, you would have said something.
Hey, wait a minute.
Not the situation I had planned.
No. So I had never met Don.
Yeah.
But I of course knew of Don. So I was at the I think the Sands in Vegas in the main room. I always bring that up, the main room.
Sure.
Because there's a pecking order.
Yeah, of course.
And he was
not in the lounge.
He was in the lounge.
Okay.
At the Sahara.
Yeah.
So Jenny said, and they had just gotten married. So
this is a young, sweaty Don Rickles.
It's the same Don Rickles you see.
I just saw him in Canada.
Did you see? Yeah.
I saw him do the Q&A at the end because I was doing a gala show after him. And when I got there, he was.
Oh, that's right. He just did
and he was sitting up there.
Just for laughs.
Yeah, taking questions, and it was phenomenal. And he always speaks very highly of you. And and it's just the yin and yang of it, the kind of the differences in your personality. I guess it was meant to be. I'm surprised you guys never did the Sunshine Boys.
We had talked about it.
Did you?
We had talked about it. By that time, it meant learning a lot of words.
So it was recently.
Yeah, I would say 5 years ago.
Right.
So anyway, so Ginny says, Don and Barbara are in town. He's in the lounge, so why don't I set up and we'll have a late dinner with him, because his hours were like, he started at 1 in the morning and went till 6 in the lounge. So we said fine. So we go to the Sahara as I remember, the coffee shop.
Right.
Which,
Yeah, the all-night diner thing.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. And we're talking. I'm talking to Barbara, and Jenny's talking to Don. And now it's time to go and see Don's 3 o'clock show in the lounge. So now Don goes back to change into a tux. He still wears a tux.
Yeah.
You know, everybody, Cosby, everybody else has given up.
Yeah.
I mean, Cosby's in sweatsuits,
Yeah.
you know, but, and I'm just in a jacket, but Don he wears the traditional tux. So he's going back to getting his tux. So we're walking into the showroom, to the lounge. And Jenny says to me, he's such a sweet man. He just wants to be with his family, and he hates being on the road. I said, honey, that isn't the man you're going to see, okay? I mean, yes, he is that way, but
She'd never seen him.
she had never seen him, no. He walks out. First thing he says, and they put us in the front row, first thing he says, this stammering idiot from Chicago was in the audience with his hooker wife from Bayonne, New Jersey. So I look over, her jaw is dropped, and I tried to tell you.
That's what he does.
And that was the introduction. Then we started taking trips together, and we just
That was it, huh?
we just have a good time. We just enjoy each other.
Well, it's interesting to me, you know, when I listen to your records again, like today, is that in my mind, and one of the reasons that I have such respect for you is that there was a difference in what you were doing as a performer at that time. I mean, Don Rickles is, he's his own thing. He's Don Rickles, but he's a club comic.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that you are part of this legacy of what really became, in my mind, there's a difference between a stand-up comedian and a comic.
There was a sea change in comedy,
right,
around 58.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was, the comic now had a point of view. He had a way to speak, a certain amount of truth to power. He was able to take his time, and it wasn't all based on old jokes. There was no jokes rating. It was a specific,
which was the reason.
Yeah.
The reason, and it was probably more Saul first,
right?
Then Shelley,
right?
Mike and Elaine, Johnny Winters, myself,
Lenny.
That was pretty much
right.
Pretty much it. The reason they couldn't do Take My Wife Please because it was college audiences.
Right.
And they didn't relate. I don't have a wife, tell me something that affects me.
Right.
And so they didn't go to nightclubs.
Right.
Because that's what I'll burn a hole in the coat,
right.
all the punchlines, which everybody had stole from everybody else.
And that was their parents anyways.
Yes.
And
so now they had to find their nightclub. Their nightclub was a college dorm. And they ordered pizza and beer, and they sat around and played
Mortzall, Lenny Bruce,
whatever record it was.
Because I think it seems like Jonathan really came out after you on record, and I guess Shelley and Mort and Lenny had done a record.
Preceded,
yeah, just a couple of years. So.
And I think Mike and Elaine. Yeah.
And Mike and Elaine.
Yeah.
So when you're coming up, I mean, before you started doing comedy, because you really didn't start doing stand-up until after the record came out, right?
I did stand-up to make the record.
Right. But
before the first place I played as a stand-up, we recorded the album 2 weeks later.
That's mind-blowing.
I know.
Because, knowing that and having read that, I was sort of listening to that record. It's like, yeah, he's a little nervous. He's a little nervous.
Oh, try Terrified. I know. Wait, there's another. So Warner Brothers, they finally found a place that would take a chance on a comedian who had never played a nightclub. We're going to tape on Friday night and on Saturday. One show on Friday night and 2 shows on Saturday. Friday night, I get a drunken woman in the front row. That's the worst thing a comedian can get.
It's still the worst thing.
Yeah, still the worst thing.
That and the bachelorette party, the worst.
Yeah, because you can do,
Same thing.
With a woman drunk, you can do maybe 2 lines, and then you better stop because the sympathy immediately shifts to her.
Right.
Well, she's drunk, so I'm doing Abe Lincoln, or I'm doing The Driving Instructor.
Yeah.
And she's saying, That's a bunch of crap. That's a bunch of crap.
Oh, no.
Through the entire. So we go up Georgia Vaca, and she's clearer than I am.
Yeah.
That's a bunch of crap. So we had to,
On the tape.
we had to, yes. We had to throw Friday night out. Now, I got two. I'm nervous enough anyway.
And where are you?
I'm in Houston, at the Tidelands in Houston.
In Texas.
In Houston, Texas, yeah.
Why that choice? Why Texas?
Because they're the only ones who would take a chance. It took them a year to find a club to hire a comedian who had never played a nightclub.
A nightclub in Chicago, there's tons of them. No one would give a local guy.
No.
It was that tight. We don't got
Right,
it.
there was a Second City.
Right.
They were approached, and I was told, they said, that isn't our kind of stuff.
What does that even mean?
I guess improv.
Okay.
I guess it means improv.
Right.
I guess that's what it means.
All right, so all you got is Saturday night now.
All I got is 2 shows Saturday night, yeah.
And you nailed it.
What you heard was that's what happened, yeah. And you could hear the nervousness in the...
Well, not like nervousness, but like knowing what I knew, and knowing that, this was it.
Okay.
You know, like there was an intensity to it. Because, by the time I got to behind the button-down line, I mean, your flow was different, your comfort level was different,
See, I'm not even aware of it.
Yeah. I mean, but this is just me being sort of like, obviously the material was great, and you were great. I mean, it was a huge record. It was the first record to win, won 2 Grammys. So that was phenomenal. That had never happened before.
Yes.
So, and out of nowhere, your first night on stage, basically, as a stand-up comic, you won 3 Grammys, and it's a national phenomenon. Sells all over the world.
I did a show one time. I'm getting ready, because I only had people, they didn't even understand. I only had one side of the album. Because people don't know what you mean by one side, because they're used to CDs.
So what, 4 bits?
3.
3 bits?
You have 3.5.
You had 3 bits going into the show in Texas?
Yeah. I had driving instructor, Abe Lincoln, and submarine commander. Were the 3 I had.
So at that time, recording an album was no small task. I mean, it was big equipment.
Oh, yeah. Well, you couldn't see it, but there were microphones hanging all over the place.
Yeah.
So I got 3 routines.
Yeah.
So I go out one night, and I come off, and I go by the maitre d', and he said, they're applauding. He said, go back out. I said, I don't have anything. I said, that's all I have. He said, well, go back out. They're applauding. I went back out, and I said, which one would you like to hear again? That's all I had.
So leading up to this, what was the trajectory? So you go to school, and then you go into service?
Yeah.
And how long were you in the service?
2 years.
Did you go to, were you in Korea?
No, I was in California.
That's it. That wasn't as hard a battle.
No more stories. I lived in Chicago at that point 22 years.
Yeah.
They send me to California. Now I run into the California weather, and I'm like,
great.
Why didn't someone tell me about this? All these years.
Right.
I've been freezing to death or perspiring from heat, and no one told me about California. So I said, as soon as I get $300, I'm coming back out here. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And you would you go to school on a GI Bill? How'd that work?
And afterwards I went to law school for a year and a half on the GI Bill.
And you bailed?
I flunked.
Give you
I failed. I'll use that from now on.
But it wasn't your thing. You weren't interested?
I was too busy with. No, I was a law clerk. Like I'd go to school in the morning and part of the afternoon. Then I'd be a law clerk in the afternoon, and then at night I was active in a play group. So something had to suffer, and it was law school. At least that's my version of it.
You were doing sketches and stuff?
No, plays.
Just full plays?
These were, full plays, yeah.
When was the accounting period?
That was after I flunked out of law school. So then I went into accounting.
Yeah.
And worked 2.5 years as an accountant.
Was it horrible? I mean, were you like, this can't be my life?
Bored to death, yeah, bored to death. That's how the Bob and Ray thing came about, because at the end of the day, this guy I was in the play group with, Ed Gallagher, he'd call me on the phone, and we'd do bits over the phone just to break the monotony of accounting. And so I did 2.5 years, and then I thought, I just got to try comedy.
And when was the advertising gig?
That was after accounting. that was a very short time. That maybe 6 months. A friend of mine was in advertising. He got me a job in advertising.
And that didn't appeal to you?
I got fired. Well, no, I mean, again, my side of it is I was on the wrong side of the room. You know, I worked for a guy named Fred Niles.
Yeah.
Who had this building, which is now was Oprah's building in Chicago, and I was on the wrong side of the room, and so he fired half the room, and I was on the. That's my version of it. You don't ask Fred because he's gone, but I think he has a different version of it. Anyway, at that point I said, I got to try this. If I fall on my face, I fall on my face. Okay, I'll go back to accounting or whatever, or advertising or.
But some of the stuff was so pointed. Your experience in accounting and your experience in advertising, your experience in sort of a face with bureaucracy, but also your experience in what really became the dominating force of American culture, which was advertising. Did it play into, like, because it seemed like on the first record, the couple of bits, the press agent, Abe Lincoln, and certainly the marketing of the Wright brothers, that these were, these were very pointed satires about image and about what people thought were true.
That's why they came up with the button-down mind. That's why it was called the button-down mind of Bob Newhart, which wasn't even my idea. That came out of Warner Brothers, that the uniform of the day on Madison Avenue was a button-down collar, and so much of the material was about advertising and marketing and that kind of thing, that they called it the button-down mind.
That was a pretty smart marketing person.
Yeah, I don't know where he is. I never got a chance to thank him.
He did you right with that one. I don't know that mainstream America had seen that type of satire really, as accessible as you made it.
I was just doing what I thought was funny.
Right.
I can't say there was a giant overall. But
it was definitely, you had there was a certain chutzpah to it. I mean, it was the world that you sort of had been in a little bit, and it was a world that everybody was starting to understand, that was becoming public. I mean, it was a pretty powerful time for America. So post-war, everything was moving forward. The economy was good, right?
Yeah. Eisenhower.
Yeah. But there was this weird beatnik thing that was happening. There was a shift that sort of led into the 60s.
Different, Actually, they always said nothing happened in the 50s. A lot was happening in the 50s.
Things were breaking apart.
Mort Saul and Lenny Bruce and Shelley and
all right, so you start, when you say you're going to start doing comedy and you got this idea, how did you first start to approach it? Because it all happened so quickly once you got the record. But did you start going out and watching people?
No, I don't think that.
You just were gonna. Bob and Ray did it.
Bob and Ray, yes.
So you didn't.
I thought I thought my dream would have been to have become a writer for Bob and Ray. That would have been. That's the epitome. That's.
Well, there's that dynamic. I mean, you can certainly hear a bit of that, but there's only you. There's just Bob, and the beats were filling in the blanks in reaction to this fictional person, this unheard person. But so you didn't go out and study anything. You're just sort of like, I'm going to do this. Did you realize it was crazy at the time, or did you really think of it as a reasonable career?
I just had to find out.
You just wanted to do it.
I just had to find out. People were telling me, "Gee, you're funny. You ought to go to New York. Get in a play." And then you go to New York and nothing happens, and you come back, and the guy who told you to go to New York says, "Yeah, I thought that'd work out for you." Now you've wasted 5 years of your life, and all this guy says is that, "Gee, really, I thought that'd work out for you."
So what was the series of events then? So you had these bits that you wrote with the guy on the phone, with your buddy from accounting,
Ed Gallagher.
Yeah. So you put these on paper.
There was a guy, I think Chris Peterson was his name. He put up the money so we could make an acetate of like 10 routines that we had, that Ed and I had developed over the, and a lot of them were improvised. They were it was an open mic, and I said,
you mean the two of you were just working?
I'll be a submarine commander.
Right.
Okay, and then I'll introduce you as you're walking. Okay, fine.
Right.
And then we'd just go. So we sent these, and we got 3 replies. We got Northampton, Mass., which I think was a girls' college near there.
You sent it out as an audition reel.
Yeah, we sent 100 of them. This guy put up the money for it, Chris Peters.
Yeah.
We sent out 100 acetates. 3 replied. It should have told us something.
Yeah.
Northampton, Mass., Jacksonville, Florida, Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Uh-huh.
Almost coast to coast. Not quite.
Select cities.
We need Seattle, and then we would have been. So, okay, now we got, Ed said, what did we charge? I said, I have no idea. I said, I know. 5-minute routines a week for 13 weeks. I said, I don't know, $7.50. $7.50.
No,
Yeah. I said, I think. Well, we found out the tape cost more than $7.50.
Yeah.
So one of the stations stiffed us. I don't know which one it was. One of the radio stations. 2 wanted to renew us on this basically poor man Bob and Ray program. And we wrote him back and said, I'm sorry, we can't afford to do this anymore. It cost us money. So then Ed was offered a job in New York in advertising, at BBD&O. So I'm in Chicago, and Ed had to take the job because he had kids and he's married, and we had nothing going. We weren't making money. So now I said, okay, I either have to find another partner as good as Ed, or I go out on my own. So I decided to go out on my own. So a lot of the conversations, somebody is still there.
Right. Yeah.
He's on the other end of the phone.
Right. Yeah. But and leading up to the record, how did the record deal sort of come together? You couldn't audition.
No. What happened was a disc jockey friend of mine.
Yeah.
A guy named Dan Sorkin. He was a great disc jockey. He was like just off the wall kind of.
Right.
So the Warner Brother record people were coming through Chicago. So they call on Dan because he's a very big disc jockey.
To see what's going on?
To just, handshake and, by the way, we've got the Everly Brothers.
Oh, right. Yeah. Really like you to play this hot piece of wax. Yeah.
That's it. So he said, I had this friend of mine. I was on they had the Tar Show in Chicago.
Yeah.
Got huge ratings. And it was off at 11 o'clock. NBC decided, what do we do with this audience that we've got? So they decided to build a show around Dan Sorkin, the disc jockey.
TV show.
TV show.
Yeah.
To keep the Par audience.
Yeah.
I was a writer and performer. And the show lasted, I think, 4 weeks, I think. The director, he said, if you were at home and you opened the window, and when the Par show went off, and the Dan Sorkin show came on, you could hear an audible click of television sets all over Chicago being turned off. So anyway, Dan he's familiar with my material. So the Warner Brother people. So he says, I have this friend of mine. I think he's very funny. And they said, oh, okay, we'll listen to him. So Dan calls me up. He said, borrow a tape recorder and record Abe Lincoln, submarine commander, and driving instructor. So I do. I take the tape down there. They listen to it. They say, okay, we think it's very funny, and we'll record you at your next nightclub.
Right.
I said, I've never played a nightclub. They said, well, then we'll have to find you a nightclub and record you at that nightclub.
And that was
and that took a year.
Unbelievable.
To find him. Because I called him up at one point, because I had signed a recording contract with Warner Brothers. And I said, whatever happened to, they said, we're still trying to find a place that'll take a chance on us.
I can't believe that's so astounding to me that the industry was so intimate at that time and so controlled that if you wanted to, you couldn't just rent a place. But that wasn't really a possibility because you needed the audience of the nightclub.
Yeah.
You needed to walk into an established joint. It's amazing to me. Okay, so it takes a year. You end up in Texas. You knock this thing out, and your expectations around it. You knew you did well, right? Yeah, I mean, you felt good.
No, I didn't know. I thought the record might sell 25,000 copies, And so if I went into a city, maybe there are 50 people that heard the album and would come in to see it,
Right.
to see the guy.
So you make a little bit of money. You think you could get started?
And it's a great adjunct to a stand-up career.
Yeah, sure.
I had no idea it was going to explode.
What do you think that was? What do you think that moment was? I mean, culturally. I mean, because before, you were familiar with Lenny Bruce, you knew Mort Swell, these guys were aggressively taking on politics, and aggressively pushing the envelope, and you seem to find a level. I guess I'm answering my own question, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. That you found this level where it was clean and not menacing to sort of get the message of kind of sticking it to corporate America, kind of sticking it to these shadow forces.
There was a God, I remember Milstein, his last name, and he was a writer for the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
And he came down. He interviewed me at some place, maybe the Hungry Eye, where I was playing at the time, and he wrote an article, and he called it "The Man Who Bites the Hand That's Feeding Him." Mm-hmm. Which is kind of is what we were talking about.
Yeah.
He's biting the advertising. He's making fun of the advertising world. That the advertising people are going to see this man, who then makes fun of what they do.
That's a tricky business, because if you go too far, they're going to be like, "Screw that guy.
Yeah,
that guy's finished. He's a troublemaker." But somehow or another, you found a very diplomatic line. There's nothing better than being able to rip somebody and have them laugh.
Without them knowing it. Sometimes without them knowing it.
Yeah,
because they're saying, "I know that guy."
Yeah. Right. It ain't me.
And it's him.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's something you share with Don Rickles. You're just a little. That might be the core of your friendship. Is that you're much more subtle, but you're kind of doing the same thing.
Okay, I'll take that. I knew where I stood in terms of politically. But I also knew I was doing something important. I knew I was making fun of the large corporation, mm-hmm. and I was making fun of the military, mm-hmm. The highly organized. I was just doing it in a little different way than
you're humanizing it.
Right.
In the sense that because you were doing characters, and and these characters, even though you don't hear Abe Lincoln talk. What he became in that bit was sort of like this, overly earnest, not quick person, and the shtick of the press agent was like,
What's the fact that this is one of the most revered presidents in American history, and I'm saying the guy isn't real bright,
he's thick, yeah. And it was, I think it kind of released some steam in the American culture. It's phenomenal. Like, in just listening to this stuff this morning, it's so fresh in my head that a lot of that stuff still holds up. And the thing with the rocket scientist is a great bit, because then
that's weird, because that's one of the really obscure.
I love it because you're dealing with Lenny did a bit about Hitler. Right.
Yeah.
That bit about he's a painter. MCA and Hitler. But it's still Hitler. So Hitler's on the periphery of the rocket scientist. But to actually draw attention to the fact that these rocket scientists were Nazis.
Yeah.
And then the whole bit is this sort of like, it turns out you're going to pay me later.
And the best line in it, and make a long story short, we lose the war.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's provocative stuff, and I don't know that Americans were necessarily, certainly people that weren't, intellectuals or on, or paying attention, had not put that stuff together at all, necessarily.
Okay. No. All I'm saying is, it struck me funny,
right.
and I did it.
Did you feel like
I wasn't setting out to blaze any new trails or?
Right, but it was just this is where your mind was working.
But this was in my gut that these things were upset me.
They did upset you, and you had a point to make.
Yeah, the large unfeeling corporation, the military. This man this submarine commander rises at least 7 levels above where he's competent,
Right.
and very calmly explains this horrendous trip that they made.
2 years underwater.
Underwater. And the sick line
Yeah.
is what we saved, as you know, we knocked two minutes off the previous record, 4 minutes and 29 seconds in surfacing, firing at the towed target, and then resubmerging. I think a lot of the time we saved was because of the men we had to leave on deck. I think they, in no small way, had an awful lot to do with the 2 minutes that we cut off the record, and none of us will soon forget their somewhat stunned expressions as we watched them through the periscope. I'm not even sure that's on the album, is it? I'm not sure.
I don't think it is.
You know why? Because Don Adams stole it.
He stole it?
I tried to. I had nothing going.
Yeah.
And I tried to sell him the Submarine Commander.
Yeah.
And he turned it down.
And then just took it?
Yeah.
Oh, before you did Button Down Mine? How'd you come in touch with Don Adams?
Because at this point nothing was happening, and
for
so
that
I said,
year.
I'll become no, even before.
Oh, okay.
This is when Ed had gone to New York, and
Right.
And I don't know what the hell direction to go in, and I said, okay, I'll become a comedy writer, and so I tried to sell it to Don Adams, and Don and I were good friends, and we kid about it.
Is he from Chicago?
No, Don's from New York.
How were you meeting these guys? Who else did you pitch?
He was at the Cloister in Chicago. Don Adams. I'd seen him on television, and
so so there was a period where you were going to be a comedy writer and you go out and try to pitch gags to guys.
Only to Don Adams. That's the only one because he stole it, and he did me a favor because I said, well, if they're going to steal it, I may as well do it myself.
So that was your one experience in writing jokes. The guy just took it. All right, kid, it's a good idea. I can't use it.
I'll tell you what happened. I did it for him.
Yeah.
And he was staying at the Mayflower Hotel in the Cloisters, and I stood up and did the Submarine Commander for him. He said, "I'm trying to get away from that particular character, but so here's my address and keep in touch." You know, so and I'm at home and I'm watching the Steve Allen show.
Yeah.
And he comes on, and he's doing the Submarine Commander.
Yeah.
And I'm yelling at the TV. That's mine. That's mine.
He did the whole bit?
He did the guts of it.
Yeah. And that one part that you weren't able to put on the record.
So when I made the record, I took that part out.
Right.
Because I was afraid people were going to say, "Oh, he stole that from Don Adams."
So that was an issue with that generation of comics at the beginning, this idea of the bits being, yours.
Yeah.
Especially if they were original. I mean, there's a difference between an old joke and a unique take on something.
Yeah.
And everyone was aware of that. And also the darkness. See, that's the other thing that, it was starting to drive me nuts when I was coming over here and thinking about talking to you, is that I think that most people know you from the television shows. Yeah. And that, you made these seminal, amazing records. And there's a darkness to it, there's a cut, there's a bite to it, you were sticking it to them, you had a point of view. I mean, the ledge psychology bit, even as simple as that, I don't know that, anyone was humanizing these, because it reminded me, that bit that Lenny did about the guy who put his mother on the plane with the insurance policy.
Oh, yes.
So there's this idea where you got this story where a cop, he's going to talk a guy off the ledge, and he doesn't.
But not appear to.
Right. He's got to play it cool.
Yeah.
And you think it's all going well. Where'd that guy go? That there's a darkness to that. That's.
But you finally talk him out of it, and then you're going to disappoint a lot of people.
Yeah, right.
Some of they've been down there 2-3 hours.
Maybe need a show.
Again, you're attacking those strange people down there
who are expecting the blood.
Who are expecting,
right? Yeah. It was amazing. So you do these 3 records almost in back to back, and now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, without being run down by the road, I think that you were given a gift in that. Do you think your point of view could have survived as just going out and doing nightclubs without the amazing sort of success that happened all at once?
No, I don't think
Could you have handled it?
But no, because I did it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I played the Houston, the Tidelands, and then there was about 3 months before the record came out. So I played nightclub. I played a club in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and it's across from Detroit.
As an unknown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The record had not come out.
Right.
And died every night. I died 2 shows a night for a week. And the Canadians are very nice people. I mean, they didn't yell anything. They'd occasionally look up and, oh, you're still on. Oh, and
Nothing.
Not a snicker.
In the States too?
No, then I went to another club in Winnipeg, and it went great.
Yeah.
Because but at Windsor, I was thinking of going back to accounting.
Right.
Because I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life standing on the stage with no one paying any attention to me and not laughing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same material that was a hit 4 months later.
So you learned a lesson there somehow.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure what it is.
All right, so now you're a comic. Now you did the 3 months.
I'm a comedian.
Yeah, stand-up comic.
Stand-up comic, okay. Stand-up comedian.
Stand-up comedian.
Jack Benny once said, a comic says funny things. A comedian says things funny.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. And you do the Winnipeg show. You got your road chops in between recording your record and the release of the record. And you went through a dark night between Winnipeg and Windsor. A very condensed experience. And then this record blows up, and now you're a made guy. You're one of the guys. Now I got to assume that a lot of guys were like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah, because they didn't know. I wasn't part of. I ran into him. Yeah, he followed me.
Right, all the comics. There were hundreds of comics.
I said, "Who?" Yeah, I didn't know any of them.
Right, where the hell did this guy
I knew him
come
by
from?
reputation,
Sure.
but I didn't know him.
The one benefit of it is, and the miracle of it is that, as we said before, if you would have just started out on the road, who the hell knows what your style would have become? So now your record becomes popular exactly the way you wanted to do it. And now people are like, we want to see that guy. And they're coming out to see it. It's an amazing gift. You didn't get all beaten up.
Because it's all attitude.
Right.
It's all attitude.
Yep. And if you were out there, grinding away, trying to make, entertain people as an unknown, you might not ever come up with what you might never arrived at what you wanted.
I was to hell with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to go through this.
I'm not cut out for this. So what happened? So it must have just been like a rocket. You must have just been like overnight almost.
It was crazy. It was just crazy. Then it was the Hungry Eye. Then it was the Crescendo.
In San Francisco?
Yeah.
And you're meeting all the guys. Who are you meeting? Like who are you seeing?
I'm not meeting all the guys.
Not yet?
I met them as I go along. I meet Buddy Hackett.
Oh God, he was so funny.
Yeah. Inventive. So inventive.
Just like, but he was one of my favorite. Like when I was a kid, I sent away for his autograph picture. There was
Did he send it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Somebody sent it.
You're one of the lucky ones.
Somebody sent it. My grandmother loved him. She'd go to Vegas a lot. My grandmother, she'd see Shecky Green, Buddy Hackett, Rickles. What she said about Rickles was funny. He's like, he's very mean, nasty, but after the show, he apologizes very nicely to everybody. And she loved Buddy Hackett. But what first started to happen? Because we're talking 1961. It's still 10 years before the Bob Newhart show, where America gets to know you as a television personality. So what happens? I know you did Dean Martin show a lot. You did Sullivan.
Yeah.
You did.
I'm getting calls.
Yeah.
The record explodes, and I got a call. You want to do 6 Ed Sullivans or 8 Ed Sullivans? I'm like, what the hell's going on?
I don't know, just like that.
But I'm enjoying the hell out.
Right. And how do you record the other 2 records within 2 years? How does that happen? Did you just get manic and just start jamming?
No, it was a flow. It just kept coming out.
As you were performing more.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd get a germ of an idea, and then I'd expand on it and say, oh, okay, that's starting to work. I'll throw that in tomorrow night, and I'll add this, and until you had a bit.
And then you started to, it seemed to me that you started to enjoy do acting characters. I watched some of the stuff with Dean Martin. It just looked like you guys were having so much fun.
We were.
I mean, how many times did you work?
Well,
with
he never. I did 24 Deans because Greg knew that.
Who's Greg?
Greg Garrison, who produced the Dean Martin show.
Yeah.
He said, "Why don't you take some of your routines and include Dean?" Because Dean came in Sunday. That was it,
That's the day they shot?
Yeah, that's the day he came in around noon, 1 o'clock. So he played golf in the morning. He came in. Now, sometimes he'd be in his dressing room, and they'd have a camera, a TV set, and he'd watch it and see what he was supposed to do. Other times he'd get involved. And so I do the thing with the hairpiece. Mm-hmm. He had never seen it.
Right.
So when I started doing it, now it breaks him up about returning the hairpiece.
So he was a great audience.
He's a great audience.
Because he wasn't a rehearsal.
No, he just, it's just funny to him. So Greg said, I need a short thing at the front, you and Dean. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, I'm a plate act. Plate act, with the sticks.
Sure.
And so, but I'm from Europe, Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
So Dean said, we're very lucky to have one of the great plate acts of Eastern Europe with us, Greg or somebody, whoever I am. Greg, a nice thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin. He said, I'd love to have you. Would you do your famous plate act for the people here? I said, I lost the plates. I said, I took the plane, the sticks and the plates are lost. I don't know where they went. He said, well, could you do it anyway? I said, do without the plates? Yes, could you do it without the plates? You want me to do the show without the plates? So I said, yeah. So no, there's nothing. There's no
He's
plates.
Just spitting mime plates. Yeah.
I don't know. I just because it's funny if a plate loses his plates, what has he got?
And Dean was just cracking up.
Now it's a challenge every week to break Dean up.
Was it hard?
No.
That's I never knew that about him, but that makes so much sense because he was so in the moment.
Oh yeah, he would finish something, and then Greg would be there. Gene, you walk over here,
and then
just read those cards. Yeah. Which is what he was doing to me. He's just reading the cards over my shoulder.
Great entertainer, though.
Oh,
yeah. So in that decade there, you were doing Vegas
prior to the
TV show.
Yeah.
So you're doing Vegas, and you got a family. You got a wife. And that must have been a strain. Was it?
Well, they wouldn't go on. Well, they'd go on the road with me too.
Yeah.
But mostly I play Vegas, and they'd come up.
Right.
But then on Sunday night they'd go home. Jenny and the kids would go home because they had to go to school.
Right.
But then they come up Friday night. So it was as normal of a life as you could
have as an entertainer.
Yeah.
But so you weren't doing the road per se. Were you?
Yeah, I'm still doing the road.
And what about the variety show? How did that come about?
The variety show was the result of the record album. That came,
the first one again.
Yeah, the first one. That was 61 to 60.
So there was a feeding frenzy. This guy. We got to get this guy.
Let's get him on television.
Yeah.
There were some very good shows in there. I wasn't very good. I was fine. It was a monologue, girl singer, guy singer, a sketch, actor, sometimes an actor, Charles Lawton.
Random Charles Lawton. He's the guy you remember. Charles Lawton was there, I think, one day.
Charles Bronson. Before he was Charles Bronson. And we'd do a sketch. I was terrible in the sketches. I'm so used to peopling the monologue with people, and then there are these people that I know he doesn't look like the guy I thought
that I made up.
That's in my head.
So you had trouble making the jump from solo to interaction.
To sketches, to sketches. Yeah, I had. Plus the fact at the end of the first year, they were going to renew the show. It was borderline. It was.
Yeah.
They said, but you got to make some changes. You have to get rid of the announcer, Dan Sorkin. I said, no.
The radio guy.
The radio guy.
You brought him along.
He was my announcer. Yeah. I said, no, I can't.
You did him a solid. That's a loyalty thing.
I guess so. He
no.
was.
I love knowing that people like take care of their friends.
Well, if he hadn't
exactly.
played the record for Warner Brothers, I'd.
Yeah. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, plus the fact that I was doing a monologue every week, 33 monologues, and they weren't of the quality. They occasionally were of the quality, but they weren't of the quality of the record.
Of the stuff that you wrote alone.
Yeah.
So you had writers.
I have writers, and I'm writing some of it myself.
Of course.
But the pressure of every week is... So to me, the quality of the monologue was... So...
And you have a very specific style. It's not like you're just doing jokes off the news. I mean, you got to, these are elaborate bits. Your monologues are probably one bit, right?
Yeah.
That's a different game.
I one time, this was in, I wasn't getting along with the producer, and at that time, so I went home to Chicago at Christmas time. This is how naive I am. I call up my manager, Frank Hogan. I said, Frank, why don't you call NBC? I really don't want to do this anymore. So why don't they put in another show? And I'll just do college concerts. Well, the next thing I do, a vice president of MCA has flown into Chicago. You can't do it that way. You can't say this isn't working out. Bob doesn't enjoy this as much as he thought he would. So can you just put something else in there? That's what I thought.
They sent the heavies,
and now they see their commission going away because they don't own the next show that they're going to replace.
Right.
So I make it to I did 33 shows, I think. So
like after the vice president, if he held your ground, the next guy would have had brass knuckles and lived near you in Chicago. We got a guy here. Maybe talk some sense in this Newhart character.
I'm going in. They're talking about renewing me. I'm thinking, do I really want to do another 33 shows, trying to a good monologue every week? And then they said Dan Sorkin. And then I said, I don't want to.
So that's incredibly bold. You realize the integrity of or
stupid.
Yeah, but But did you have regrets about it at that time? I mean,
no,
because you were making money
everything
on the road.
Everything has turned out
right.
Great.
But the reasons were, the integrity of what you do, and the sort of like the treatment of your friend. I mean, that was those are big artistic choices. There's nothing worse than saying lines that aren't right. They're not funny, and then you got a bunch of people saying like just do the joke. It's not it's a funny joke. It's funny enough. What do you gotta go crazy for?
And as you're writing the new routine, they're saying funny.
Yeah, it's great.
That's
great.
Funny.
Yeah,
funny,
sure.
funny.
Yeah, no change of expression. There's a producer over at Conan.
Funny idea.
And if you actually make them laugh, it's like, oh my God. If that's what you're really laughing, like you've been bullshitting me for what, a year now? That's the first time you laughed.
It's like you're walking down the street, and you come to a corner of a building and you hear this terrible noise and you turn around and you see this safe has fallen and just missed you by about 3 feet.
Yeah.
And that's your life. Oh my God! I almost got.
That's it. So then you're just for those years you're doing TV. This is after the variety show. You're doing D. Martin show. Do you feel like you're part of the crew at some point? Like you're doing Johnny's show a lot, and you're doing D. Martin's show. I mean, you hanging out with Buddy Hackett, with Don Rickles?
Yeah, now I'm getting to know, especially in Vegas.
Yeah,
you'd get to know opening acts and you get to know closing acts.
And who are some of the guys you work with that you really got close to?
Well, Shecky.
Yeah.
Don, Buddy.
Do you talk to Shecky still?
I saw Shecky. I did it. Yeah, I did a date last year in the spring. So I saw Shecky.
Yeah.
I mean,
is it good to see these guys after so many years?
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen him.
Shecky, he'd just make it up. He'd just walk on stage and just start making it up. And
Kill.
I heard great stories. Like Vegas, they wanted the opening act to do a half an hour and the closing act to do an hour, and that's what they wanted. They didn't want 31 from their opening act or an hour and one from. They wanted an hour. That's all, because they wanted to get the people back in the casino.
Right.
So Shecky is in the lounge at the Riviera.
He sort of invented lounge comedy, didn't he?
Yeah. And the lounge is, at this point, is a small showroom. It's beautiful. I mean,
right.
And so he's in the middle of his act. So he's gone over the hour. So they start turning out the lights. Yeah. And he's on stage. So he takes a match. He lights it. He does the rest of his act.
He seemed like a pretty exciting character.
Oh, yeah.
And Buddy Hackett live was amazing too, huh?
I saw Buddy one time. It was just, he came out and he said, I was talking to Joe Kelman. I know Joe Kelman. Joe Kelman was a guy in Chicago. He had a glass company. And I got married to Sherry, my wife Sherry. Cherie Dubois was her name, Cherie Dubois. Her actual name was Esther Cohen, but she changed her name to Cherie Dubois. So I tried to, and he goes on and he does his bits. And then, now 20 minutes in, he says, oh, what was I talking about? And the audience, as one person says, Joe Kelman. Oh, yeah, Joe Kelman. And I'm thinking, you SOB, you son of a bitch, you knew exactly where you were. Yeah. But you made it look like
you just
he
improvised
was making it up.
Yeah. It's a good trick.
Great.
But you always stuck by the script of what you did. You were not you didn't improvise much, or you didn't like it? Or...
Here, I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
I had a thing, because I started really at the top.
Right.
Like, most comics start the opening act for 10, 15 years. But in the back of their minds, it's, when I make it, I'm going to buy a Maserati, and I'm going to buy the home in Beverly Hills. And now I started at the top.
Yeah.
So I got to learn at the top. I got to learn my craft at the top, because I don't know my craft yet. So every night in Vegas, I peek through the curtains to check out the audience, and it looks like a trouble table. And he's drunk. He's gonna be trouble. Oh shit, there's a woman over there. She's gonna be trouble. So
you feel it, don't you?
Huh? Yeah. Every show.
Yeah.
It's a ritual.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to my manager, and I hear my bow music. I thought, I haven't looked through the curtains yet. And I thought to myself, well, I'll handle it. Whatever happens, I'll handle it.
Yeah. That's a big shift.
That's when I knew. I learned.
I feel that too. You go in the room and you're like, there's a bad energy. What's happening right there? That's going to be the problem. Sometimes they're not, though.
No.
They're just people. Some of them know how to behave. Some of them realize they're at a show.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
And now after 53 years, there's a respect that they don't.
Sure.
They don't yell up at you.
Yeah.
The reason I had a problem with drunks or hecklers, because I'm in the middle of something. I'm in the middle of the rocket scientist, and now there's some drunk, and he's yelling out something. Now I got to go outside the bit to put him down somehow, and then get back into the bit. So that
it ruins the continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes depending on how the crowd work goes, it's hard to get back into the bit.
Yeah.
But you've had to do that.
That's why I hated it.
Yeah.
And that's why I look for the trouble.
But even if you look through the trouble, even if you see them, you're just preparing yourself. You still can't stop anything from happening.
Of course.
I didn't realize you guest hosted the Tonight Show so much.
Yeah.
That was it. Like, that's unheard of now. No one does that. Everyone's so afraid of losing their job. No one would ever think
87 times or something. Yeah.
And Johnny would just, you just get a call? I mean, your relationship with Johnny was good? Were you guys friends?
Yeah, no, we were friends, good friends, yeah.
And he was a hilarious guy.
Oh, quick, yeah.
And he just trusted you with that gig. It seemed like there was only a few people during that period.
Yeah. Well, see, here's what he would do to me.
Yeah.
You go to a pre-interview.
Yeah.
Right, you're going to do Johnny's show. So,
right.
Pre-interview. Just came back from a trip with Rickles. Has a funny story about Don in Venice. Okay, that's the first. Second one, just has a new dog, has funny stories about dog in the house. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Newhart, come sit down next to Johnny.
Yeah.
Did you ever go skeet shooting? And I look at him like, you son of a bitch. You know I have nothing on skeet shooting. What are you doing? And he had this kind of smile on his face.
He set you up.
But he trusted me. And we'd make something out of it. But he did that all the time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And, of course, what I loved is when he came out and died.
Yeah.
And would call the mic, see if the mic's on. And
yeah. He invented something, I'll tell you that. And did you like doing that? Do you like hosting anything?
Yeah, it was a challenge, but it was so powerful. I mean, in plugging appearances,
So you fill up places.
But I did it for 3 weeks one time in New York. Mm-hmm. I filled in for Johnny. He was having salary disputes with NBC, so they were looking for people who maybe would take Johnny's place.
But he knew that?
Sure. This is in the 70s.
Did you have to ask him first? He said, I know you're in this contract.
No, I was just kind of aware of it. No one ever said it, but it was kind of in the... so I did it for 3 weeks. The writers took the 3 weeks off because I'm not going to fire a writer.
Right.
So they would give me 3 bad jokes, and then they'd work on their play. So I've got 18 bad jokes. So I'm at the end of 3 weeks. I'm a basket case. I'm brain dead.
Yeah.
And the man did it for 30 years. I did it for 3 weeks. I'm brain
exhausted.
dead.
Yeah.
It takes a special person to do that.
Oh yeah.
To do that show.
It's insane.
A dedication. It's incredible.
And when in terms of movie acting, it seems like you did a lot of a few meaty parts, but you'd show up and they know exactly. It seemed like people when they cast you, they were like, "Well, Newhart would be good for this."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you didn't really do really serious parts till fairly recently, right on television.
Yeah.
Do you like doing that?
It depends on the project.
Right.
I mean, I never studied acting.
Right.
I mean, I was in that group, but I never really studied.
What was that group? Did they have a name?
Just Oak Park Playhouse.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't
Second City?
No, suburb of Chicago.
Right.
And we were doing Pygmalion and those kind of.
With no guidance, just a director.
No, and I played in very cheap sets. That barely held up through the performance.
Yeah.
Someone sat and they broke and fell apart.
But Catch-22 was a big role.
Oh yeah.
And that was a bizarre movie, and a great movie, a great story. Mike Nichols directed it.
That's right.
Did you know Mike previous to that?
No, I only knew of Mike through Mike and Lion.
Yeah.
And then of course when he started directing.
That was the cast on that was astounding.
Yeah.
And when you did that, did you feel like your movie career was going to really take off?
That's an odd. Mike came to us and said, "You're all figments of Yossarian's imagination. You don't actually exist. You're figments of Yossarian's imagination." Which is the catch-22 of I want to get out of.
You got to be crazy to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but if you're crazy, then you're not crazy.
Right.
Because everybody does. Yeah. So I didn't know what the hell Mike was talking about. So I just played it for laughs. I just played major. I made it funny.
Yeah, it was funny. Now you're seasoned. You can act. You're one of the guys. Was there, before I get to that, was there resentment of you coming in as green as you were from other comics? Did you feel that at all?
Probably.
Yeah, that's good. That's diplomatic. A little bit, maybe. I just know comics, and I got to assume you're taking a bit of shit here and there.
Yeah, I won't tell you who the comic was, but he could be in Venice.
Yeah.
For 6 months.
Yeah.
Staying at a beautiful hotel, great money, sitting reading Variety, and cast. I would have been perfect for that.
Yeah.
And he's mad.
Yeah. Right. Sure. Yeah.
Perfect. I would have been perfect for that.
I had a friend who used to call the TV the resentment box. You look at how the hell that guy get that? I guess it never changes. It's a tough business. So the opportunity, had you been given other opportunities to do sitcoms before that, before the Bob Newhart show, and you were just too busy on the road or didn't want to do it?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't remember. Maybe.
Yeah.
But they didn't. I read them and they didn't seem right.
So how did this come about?
This came about because MTM was founded by Mary Tyler Moore, Grant Tinker, and Arthur Price.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Price was my manager. So he came to me, and this Mary's show was a big hit. He said, would you like to do a television show? And I said, yeah, Artie. I said, you get off the road, and have a normal life. Yeah.
Just drive over to Burbank or wherever.
Yeah. And he said, okay. So he said, I got a couple writers, and Dave Davis, Lorenzo Music, and the three of us sit down and kind of knock out what you'd like to do. Yeah. So we started talking about, okay, all right, based on the record, Bob listens to people well. That's what he's a very good listener. Okay, what's a profession where people listen? Psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, psychiatrists really, they deal with seriously ill schizophrenics. And, and much as I would like to get my humor from schizophrenics, I don't think America's ready for it yet. So then we said maybe a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, psychologist. They do kind of lesser disturbed people.
Right.
Then we started casting. Then we saw
Bill Daly.
Well, I knew Bill from Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Bill wasn't in the original. The original pilot was Susie. Susie was on. She was on the Tonight Show with Johnny.
Mm-hmm.
And my manager, Arthur Price, had seen. He said, "I think I found your wife." A comedian. I didn't know she was missing. Boom.
Yeah.
He said, Suzanne. I said, Suzanne'd be great. I said, I didn't think she'd want to do weekly television. He said, well, I'll make a phone call. And so she said yes. So then we built the show around the condominium that we stayed in Chicago, and the condominium meetings. And we shot that pilot. Between that time, then we reshot it. We shot it with Bill Daly, Mrs. Paley, or Bill Paley, who ran the network, owned the network. Seen her on a Merv Griffin show. That she'd be very funny on what's his name's show. Your show. Yes. Bill Paley. What's his name? One of many what's his names. Yes. So that March, I had worked with Peter on Peter Bonner's on Sketch 22, and I knew we were going to do the show. So who was Paley talking about? Marshall Wallace. Marshall Wallace. Okay. Yeah. So I knew we were going to do the show in front of a live audience, which every show did. So I knew we needed people who were used to live audiences, because as a stand-up, I was used to live. Peter was in the committee up in San Francisco. Yeah. Marcia had done some acting. Susie, of course, had done a lot. Never done. Well, she had done Broadway, but serious stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And Bill Daly. Bill was doing stand-up about the same time I was doing stand-up. So we reshot the show with those people at it.
Yeah, I was wondering because I was going through the first disc, and then like the second disc starts with a pilot. The one
I think it's in this.
It is in there. Yeah,
it's in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now you got this great cast of characters, and then you got the recurring cast of the people in the group sessions and the patients. The fellow who played Mr. Carlin, who was amazing. What was his name?
Jack Riley.
Unbelievable. Was he a comic?
No, he wasn't a stand-up. No, he was. He was part of the what I call the Cleveland Mafia, which was Pat McCormick.
Oh yeah, he was funny.
Jack Riley, Tim Conway, Ernie Anderson. Anyway, these guys. Anyway, he was.
They were out here.
Yeah, Jack was more an actor than a stand-up. Yeah,
so funny.
Great character.
Is he still around?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's how history was made. Is that you were set up because you're a good listening is one way to put it, but I think reactor.
Well, that's the other word they use. Yeah, Bob reacts to.
Yeah, and that's sort of like I guess that's where the comparisons to Benny come from. That you have that moment, that take that's very specific to you. I don't see a real correlation, but it's just a comic thing.
They say I have his timing, but you can't teach somebody timing.
No, that's the weird thing.
What Jack was he was brave. He was one of the bravest. Oddly, Jack Benny with his walk and all that was one of the bravest comedians who ever lived.
Really?
Because he would take the time.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of silence or quiet or anything.
That's a lot of lessons to be learned from that. To own it. Yeah. And decide your own pace.
I'll tell you a story about Dick Martin told me the story.
From Rowan and Martin?
Rowan and Martin.
Yeah.
Jack is appearing at the Sahara in Las Vegas.
Uh-huh.
The opening act is the Will Master Trio with Sammy Davis Jr.
Uh-huh.
Okay. They come out, they open for Jack, destroyed the audience. They're screaming, standing on the tables, pounding. They go out, Jack comes out. He said, aren't they wonderful? Aren't they just wonderful? He said, in the afternoon, sometimes I'll have some tea. Usually around, 4:30 in the afternoon. Quarter 5.
Mm-hmm.
5, so sometimes 5. And I was in a movie with this actor, and I can't remember his. I promised Sammy Davis he could do another. Would you mind if Sammy coming out? Birth of the Blues, destroyed. Now you thought they destroyed them the first time. They're pounding on the tables. Jack watches them go off. Clive, that was his name.
Did he pull him around?
Yeah.
Killed it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's brave.
Yeah.
That's brave.
Yeah. It's a hell of a reset after a big musical act, I bet. So that show, the Bob Newhart show, I think it sort of set the standard for a comedian being in a sitcom, in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, it was like revolutionary. I mean, Mary Tyler Moore was one thing. That was an ensemble cast. But to build a show around a stand-up, it seems to me that was one of the first ones, really, of that model.
I think so. Because you didn't have to spend 6 episodes explaining who the guy was.
Right.
You knew who Crosby was when he walked on. You knew.
Yep.
You knew who Roseanne was. You knew who.
Yep. And that all happened after you. And you were obviously, comfortable with the material and the character, and you liked your writers.
Yeah.
Now, was it a struggle at all to sort of honor your voice, and how much did you have influence in that?
Well, I had total control if I wanted to.
Right.
If I wanted to exercise.
Yeah.
in the 6th year of the show, and I had already said that was going to be the end of the show, the 6th year of the Bob Newhart show. They came to me with a script where Suzanne is pregnant. Now, I had specified in the very first show, I didn't want to have children. That isn't the kind of show I wanted to do. So they in the hopes that maybe I would consider not ending the show with the 6th year and maybe going to the 7th or 8th, that maybe if they introduce Suzanne's pregnant and has a baby. And so I read this over the weekend, and so Mike Zinberg, the producer, calls me. He said, "Did you get the script?" I said, "Yes, I read it." He said, "What'd you think?" It's very funny. I said, "It's a very funny script." He said, "Oh, good, because we were worried. We didn't know if you'd like it." I said, "Yes, it's very funny." I said, "Who are you going to get to play Bob?"
So that was that.
So it's there. The power's there. If you choose to exercise it or not, it's
right.
And you know it's there.
But that wasn't your thing. They knew, and there was never. Yeah. So that ran for what?
6.
6, and that was it.
Yeah.
And that was enough.
Yeah, it's just it's a feeling. It's just okay. Yeah, I think.
And they were okay with stopping it.
They weren't thrilled.
Right. Yeah.
The network wasn't thrilled.
Right. So now the next show, which happened what few years later?
4 years, I think, later. Yeah.
And you just wanted to keep working, doing the TV.
No, I knew I was coming back to television.
Yeah.
I loved the medium. I enjoyed it. I understood it.
Yeah.
There was a normalcy to it.
You had a job.
You go home and have normal hours.
Yeah. That went for, 8 years?
That went 8, yeah. The first 2 were kind of shaky. We were feeling our way. And then the second year we brought in Julia Duffy, who was wonderful. And then Peter Scolari. And Tom Poston was in from the Bob Newhart show.
Newhart
he was the peeper.
Yeah.
He was, And then it took off. But the first couple of years were kind of...
But they held in. They stayed with you.
Yeah. Because I think a loyalty to me and Larry, Darryl, and Darryl.
Guys. Those were the guys. Those were you had a hell of a job as a straight man with that career, huh?
Well, what I would always, whenever they came in, I was always behind the counter putting keys away or something because there was going to be about 30, 40 seconds of applause when they came in. And when they left, there would be 30, 40 seconds.
People loved them.
The first show they came in, we had a witch was buried in the basement of the inn. And I called Larry, Darryl, and Darryl, not knowing who they were. I said, we have a problem and we need someone to come over. They formed a company called Anything for a Buck. That was what they were known as. And I said, well, I need somebody to dig something up in our basement. He said, well, we're very busy and we couldn't make it till next Friday. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, we need somebody before that. He said, just out of curiosity, what is it? I said, it's a dead witch is buried in our basement. He said, we'll be right over. So he comes in. Hey, hi, I'm Larry. This is my brother Darryl. This is my other brother Darryl. And the audience goes crazy. I said, how you doing? He said, I hurt my back. I said, oh. It sounds like, how'd you hurt your back? He said, crawling under a house. I said, oh, it sounds like rough work. He said, it wasn't work. I just enjoy crawling under houses.
That guy was funny. What was his name?
Bill Sanderson.
Yeah. So that goes into syndication. The Bob Newhart show goes into syndication. Where were you at mentally? Were you done? Were you sort of retired from television in your mind? Had you done enough?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of. My feeling was, I'd say, no, I still have my fastball.
Right.
Which actually it's a changeup.
Yeah.
It's not a fastball. And they wanted me for a show. I didn't. Well, no. I came back. It didn't work. That was Bob.
Right.
It was kind of, the idea was we want to give them a Bob Newhart they'd never seen. Well, the audience didn't want to see a Bob Newhart.
Too late in the game for that.
So that didn't work. Then George and Leo, they talked me into George and Leo. They came to me and said, you have to. That didn't work.
But you were still doing stand-up dates occasionally?
Yeah, oh, sure.
And you still do it now?
I do about 20 a year.
How do they go? You love it still?
Yeah. I hate getting there.
Yeah.
I hate the flying.
Do you generate new stuff or no?
Well, some they want to hear.
Yeah.
I usually do. I'll do one. I'll do a driving instructor or so while
Right.
Raleigh or one of the old, because I know that's where some of the people want to hear that.
Didn't you do a special that was like in the 90s that was really
At the Raymond Theater,
those 3 records?
the first, yeah, pretty much on.
It's amazing.
But live,
Right.
in front of an audience,
Right.
as opposed to on a record.
That's 35 years after, right?
Yeah,
And all those bits, I imagine, held up really well.
yeah, that was amazing.
The only one that seems dated is the automaton one. The machines.
Well, and Khrushchev doesn't
Sure,
hold up.
right, because no one has a point of reference for it. But I thought that the machine one was prescient. I mean, it was it did happen, not exactly that way.
Well, that depends on how America feels about the military at that point.
Oh, okay.
Whether they like them or don't like them.
yeah. How did you weather the '60s when everything kind of blew open? I mean, because you just were sort of on your own trajectory. But it seemed like, you got guys like Carlin, and you got guys like, Pryor in the late 60s that really kind of locked into that.
Because that wasn't who I was.
Yeah.
I just, I'm a comedian. I'm a stand-up comedian.
Right.
But
you didn't feel pressure.
I don't inform people.
Right.
I mean, well, I do, but
yeah,
I do it very quietly. I do it. Who am I?
Right. Yeah.
That's kind of my attitude.
And, like looking back on all of it, in all the comedy, because you seem to be a tremendous fan of comedy, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
And, you bring up Pryor.
Oh, he's
the best, right?
Genius, yeah. No question about it. Here's what Pryor did for me. I made this comparison before. I got the Mark Twain Award. Pryor was the first recipient of the Mark Twain Award.
Yeah.
And what Pryor did and Mark Twain did are virtually the same things. Twain wrote about life on the Mississippi, life on the frontier, really. 1900, the Mississippi was the frontier in many ways. Richard did life in the inner city.
The thing that always struck me about him, outside of the bits, was his vulnerability as a performer. Like, there was a sort of a real tangible kind of emotional rawness to him that, you felt like a lot of stuff was really happening in that moment, and that, he was really putting his heart out there.
Yeah.
And
painful stuff, too.
Oh, yeah. When you read about his life.
But you read it, he does the African-American minister.
Yeah.
The African-American minister in the black community occupies a position that pastors and ministers, they don't occupy in the white community. Mm-hmm. They are much more of a force.
Mm-hmm. The weight he brought to that thing.
Yeah. George Slaughter had some kind of comedy awards or something.
Yeah, the comedy awards, right.
I presented him with the award. Then Richard looks at me and he said, I stole your album. I said, what'd you say, Richard? He said, I stole your album in Peoria. I went in the record store, put it in my jacket.
With the first record?
So I said, Rich, I get 25 cents an album. He said, give me a quarter. Somebody got a quarter? Give me a quarter here. Here you go.
He was something else.
He's
beyond.
He's beyond.
You love comedy.
Oh. When I'd be in Vegas.
Yeah.
I'm there for 4 weeks, and this is the third week, and 2 shows a night, and you're not sure what day it is.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to go on. Oh, God. Jenny would play me Pryor.
Really?
She put the record Pryor.
Which one? Which album? Do you remember?
Oh.
Any of them?
And any one of them.
Yeah.
Mudbone it's uber comedy. It's beyond comedy.
Yeah.
It's Mark Twain.
Right.
It's cultural. It's a whole culture. It's just.
Were you familiar with him before he became?
Yeah, but I knew of him like when he was doing the roadshow Cosby stuff.
Right.
And he'd be on the Sullivan Show.
Right.
And he did Rage. I think he was a poet. Wasn't he a poet? And he did something.
Yeah.
Oh, very toned down. And I was in Vegas, and he was at a different place. I think that's when he said, "Screw it."
Yeah, screw
it. This is what I'm going to do, because I know he attacked a guy in the front row who happened to be one of the executives for the Hughes Corporation, a guy named Dick Danner, and he said, "What are you shaking your head for?" And then he started doing. That's when he started doing.
He broke open.
What made him famous.
Right.
And just talking about being black in Peoria and the mother and
you were in Vegas that night where he did that?
Yeah, because I heard because they fired him on the spot.
Right, and that's when he went to Berkeley and regrouped
that's when
his whole thing.
He said that this is what I'm going to do.
I can't be this guy anymore.
Yeah. I can't be a road company. Cosby.
Yeah. But you put Pryor, on this, in this other world. And
Rickles is not thrilled about that, but he would never hear this unless somebody rats on me and tells him about it.
Well, it's a different game, Like if you look back at, and you still watch a lot of comics,
That's my favorite. My favorite thing is seeing a Letterman or something. A great new comedian.
Yeah.
Comes on and kills.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
because you can relate to it.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Just
I try to. Yeah. But with comics, you want to see them and you don't, because you see one and then like 2 weeks later you'll start doing a bit and it's all falling into place and you start saying,
"Wait a minute.
Did I see this?
Yeah, you got.
Am I making this up or did I see this somewhere?"
It's true. If you're immersed in it.
And for a while, I wouldn't watch other comics for fear, because the new stuff that I came out in the first album, it flowed. It just. How long do you want to make it?
Right.
You want to make it 12 minutes? You want to make it 8 minutes?
Yeah, you do. You sort of have to keep away from it. Were you ever able to meet some of those other guys? Like did you ever have any contact with Lenny Bruce or Mort Sahl or those guys?
I met Lenny a couple times. Yeah.
It seems like there's a line drawn between him and everything else. Not in a good way necessarily. Like he was, it seemed to me to the comic community, to some of them, they're like, that guy's just, overrated troublemaker.
He was uneven though. Lenny would be uneven.
Right.
He would be just great one night, and then the next night he wouldn't be so great. And then he got into that whole assassination and
right.
And,
with the Kennedy assassination?
Yeah. And then
with Jackie trying to get out of the car. Yeah, it was bold.
No, he was so, but he was a mixture of show business, Chicky Baby, and and Yiddish.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't realize how much Yiddish he spoke.
Yeah.
It was all very second nature to him.
Yeah.
And then and then the battle became the battle with drugs and with the authorities.
Yeah.
And that just crushed him. Now, if you were to, the other thing I want to ask you. Now, I know you did these 2 series. One for 6 seasons, one for 8 seasons. You never won an Emmy.
Okay.
You got nominated a lot, and then you do some
Big Bang
Theories, and they give you the Emmy.
Yes.
Was there a building bitterness about that?
No, because all right, I did 6 years, 8 years, 14 years, and then 15 counting the Bob Newhart show, the variety show, and then 17 or 18 with Bob and George and Leo. So that's 18 years on television.
Yeah.
I was nominated 6 or 7 times.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For several years, I didn't submit my name for the award because I didn't feel what I do doesn't get awards.
Yeah.
But that's all right because that's what I do.
Right.
I'm not going to change what I do to get an award.
So you're like, I'm not even going to put myself in the running.
I didn't, for 6 years. So I've been nominated enough. I was beat by people who were very good.
Yeah.
I no, there was no.
Yeah.
Would I like to have had one? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have one now.
Good. And you did SNL a couple times. That one must have been fun.
Twice, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. I think Lauren must have a tremendous amount of respect for you.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, it's that show was amazing.
Yep.
To do it. I couldn't do it today.
Right.
Physically to do it.
And you work with Will Ferrell on Elf. That must have been,
Elf.
He's a very funny guy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be up
nice.
there.
He also doesn't get a lot of credit for his role in Elf because that could have been just a big dumb guy who didn't get it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a big dumb guy. It was this very likable person who thought he was an elf.
Yeah.
It would have been very easy for people to say, oh, come on.
Yeah. He's a special guy. A very sweet guy. But when he knows he's one of those guys where I interviewed him, low key, very amicable, and he's one of those guys where you sit and talk to him and you're kind of half waiting. You're like, someone's gonna have it. I just don't get. When's he gonna? I'm talking to him for an hour, going, when are you gonna do the funny thing?
See, it's what we talked about off mic, which was. To talk to somebody else who's done stand-up, it's you can't explain it.
I know. Special club.
Yeah, it's a very private club filled with a lot of crazy people.
That's for sure. Always, right?
Who was the guy who committed suicide?
Rich Jenny?
Jenny.
Yeah.
I thought he was wonderful.
Great comic.
Great.
Yeah, who knows? Something went wrong. Yeah, you see it all the time, and it's a lot of the same reason why we're comics. We don't fit in. And whatever's going on out there ain't right for us. And there's a certain amount of acceptance. That's the beautiful thing.
That's it.
It's like, obviously for generations it's been true. You got a bunch of loose screws out there, and they're with us. And what would be sort of overwhelming to just a regular working person is just the liability of our business. Oh yeah, I know that guy. He's out of his mind. I wouldn't get into a car with him, but you can eat with him. That kind of stuff. Don't give him your phone number. Great act. Don't give him your phone number. So that's been going on since the beginning. Yeah.
Dick Martin told me this story. Dick Martin he has never lied to me in his life.
Yeah.
You think comics are crazy.
Right.
There's a ventriloquist named, if I remember, Patrick, is on a plane, a small plane.
Yeah.
With the dummy.
Yeah.
He jumps out of the plane, leaves a note, the dummy did it.
He killed himself?
He killed himself.
I hope that's true.
I hope it's true too.
So I know the box set is out of the complete Bob Newhart show from the Shout Factory. I know that there's a few available of Newhart as well. The records are always available outside of the first 3. You did like 7, right? Altogether.
I think so, yeah. And one was a compilation, I think.
Right. Now, like looking back, as I was saying, the Mudbone bit. Now, if you were to say one bit of yours that you thought that's just the gem, the one you like doing the most, or the one that you thought that was the best bit you ever wrote, what would it be? And I'll play it on the show.
Okay. The cliche is which child.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Do you want?
Right, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Sophie's Choice.
But I like them for different reasons. I like the driving instructor because I think that's the one that pushed the record, that drove the first album.
Very accessible.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love the Submarine Commander.
Yeah.
It's the big corporation,
right,
where some guy gets to the top who's totally incompetent. I love Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
Because it says something that's it's even truer today than it was 53 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The focus groups and
Yep.
manipulation of
Sure. The people who are really running things.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, I got to tell you, it was a tremendous honor for me to talk to you.
Thank you, thank you.
And I
we,
really-
and we got into great areas
I
that
appreciate it.
I love to get into.
Well, thanks for talking, Bob.
Sure.
I just got done. I just got out of Bob Newhart's house. Now I'm driving home. And what an amazing conversation. What an amazing history. What an amazing memory and clarity the guy had. And I was really happy and honored to talk to him. And I shut the equipment off. I was packing up my bags, and we were chatting. And then I went out to my car to get my phone to take a picture. And the phone had overheated, so I came back, and I was waiting around. And Bob was, showing me pictures that were in his office. It was a letter from President Kennedy, a picture of him and George Burns, a picture of him and Jack Benny, a picture at a party at Buddy Hackett's house with Shecky Green, Don Rickles, Jerry Vale, Dom DeLuise, Norm Crosby, Norman Fell, pictures. It's just, he's taking things off the wall. He's showing me pictures of the cast of both shows, and what an amazing career. What a sweet guy. What an amazing life he had. And it really went differently than a lot of other comics I talked to, in terms of a guy who got these amazing opportunities, based on not very much experience, but really, showed up and was the real deal. It's a hell of a thing to start at the top and stay there. It was an amazing afternoon for me, and I'm happy to share it with you. And I hope he's around for a long time. Okay, I should probably drive and not talk on the mic. Okay. Hey people, one last thing. Have you seen Boyhood yet? I did. It's a pretty amazing movie.